I was a Boy Scout growing up, and from 6th grade to 11th grade, I did a lot of camping. Some of it was local, about an hour from my house here in New Jersey, and some of it was in the fairly remote parts of Maine. And there were certainly some experiences I had that were difficult, like the time that our canvas tent started to leak like crazy during a storm because we leaned against the side of it, letting the water get in. There was one time as an adult that I was camping, and there was a very disturbing raccoon making weird noises outside the tent. Nothing bad ever happened, but it was creepy. But there are people who've gone camping and experienced far worse. Hi, I'm Jim Riley. Welcome to Jim's Friday Freakout. And this week we're looking at What's That Noise? Camping Edition. For the love of heaven, don't ever go camping. Ever. Blue Highways is a book that came out in the 1980s that I highly recommend, by William Least Heat Moon, a story of traveling around the country in a converted van and discovering the heart of America, staying off the main roads and on what he called the Blue Highways. There was one time he was cutting through a mountain pass in the west, high in the Rocky Mountains, and got stuck in a snowstorm. He was unable to get out, his truck couldn't move, it was extremely cold, and what was he afraid of? A bear attack. He said there was absolutely no reason to believe that a bear would come out of hibernation in the winter to attack a steel truck, but that's the fear that got a hold of him. Bears. It is an elemental fear for all of us. In fact, in May of last year, there was a time when a camper was camping in Colorado and a bear leaned on their tent. Now, it wasn't much of an attack, but a woman did get a scratch on her head, so they decided to count it as a bear attack. But far worse things have happened. July 2017, a 19-year-old, identified only as Dylan, was awakened by a crunching noise. And that crunching noise was the sound of a bear digging its teeth into his skull. It dragged him out of his tent by the head, dragged him 12 feet until other campers were able to fight it off. So the Colorado Parks and Wildlife people said that it was unusual because they weren't keeping any food near, which is one of the things you're supposed to do when you're in bear country, which I think is kind of everywhere. But so a scientist looking at the situation, actually with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, looking at the facts, said it was probably a predatory attack. And this was a black bear. These things do happen. So in all of North America, there are about 750,000 black bears, and about 55,000, they would say at a maximum, grizzly bears. And look at this fantastic map that somebody put together. This shows the people killed by black bears represented by squares, the people killed by grizzlies represented by triangles. And this, I think, is over the last 20 years. So one of the things you'll notice is that even though there is less than 1/10 as many grizzlies as there are black bears, they're doing a disproportionate amount of the killing of human beings. Now, you'll notice that there is an attack in California. California, even though it has a grizzly bear on its flag, doesn't have a resident population of grizzlies. But sometimes, you know how certain places just behave in exactly the stereotypical way you would expect? The one grizzly bear kill in California was on a movie set. So remember the old principle? If it's brown, lay down. If it's black, fight back. Meaning if you're attacked by a brown bear, a grizzly bear, play dead. And God willing, it will lose interest and begin to leave you alone. A black bear has the opposite response. You play dead, it says it's time to eat. So if you get attacked by a black bear, keep fighting and don't quit. All right, so if you check out wiseaboutbears.org, it says about 1 person per year is killed by black bears. Looks about half that many grizzly bears. And we don't have any statistics for Mexico. Those stats include Canada and the United States. So, wolves. In 2019, there was an attack probably prompted by the wolf's poor condition, noted a Parks Canada spokesperson. So remember, the term lone wolf usually denotes somebody who has a problem, and I think the reason we have that phrase is that it tends to describe wolves as well. If they're in a pack, I'm not aware of an occasion when a pack of wolves has attacked a human being, but it's these lone wolves. Sometimes they have rabies, sometimes they're starving to death because of their poor physical condition or some injury. Those are the people that might go after a person or a house pet. Wolf.org says no one has been killed by a wolf in North America in the 20th century. The attacks that have occurred, again, rabies, cornering, habituation to people, and a highly modified environment. They get us. They know that people look like the low-hanging fruit in terms of like prey animals. We're not all that big, we can't run that fast. But I think they've learned, and it's built into their genetics at this point, you go after a human, they'll come back and kill your whole family. A 2016 Sierra Club article talked about some people that went camping, and for several hours during the night, a cougar was circling their campsite. Even when they built a fire, even when they made loud noises, even though there were multiple people present. The California Department of Fish and Game officer who commented on the incident said that this was unusual, but certainly possible. So California, in recorded history, has had 16 verified mountain lion attacks on humans, 6 of them fatal. In fact, in 2012, a guy camping near Nevada City, California, was attacked. And that was the 16th attack on humans since 1890. The Humane Society has a lot of advice on what to do if you encounter a cougar when you're out in the woods. Some of it is advice I've heard before. For example, make yourself look as large as possible. Open your coat. Possibly even hold your coat over your head. If you have little children with you, pick them up and hold them so they don't seem like separate, smaller possible prey animals that the mountain lion could go after. Great. Some of the advice is definitely something I wouldn't expect. It just strikes me as a little bit weird. For example, the Humane Society says that opening and closing an umbrella quickly can deter a cougar. Okay, I would believe it could. Something else, if a cougar does attack you, as with a black bear, the key is fight back, don't quit. And it said use any weapon that comes to hand, and even a fire extinguisher can be effective. So the next time you're hiking in cougar territory with an umbrella and a fire extinguisher, you don't have to worry. Murderers. In May of 2019, several campers on the Appalachian Trail, which runs from Georgia to Maine along the crest of the Appalachian Mountains, met a guy whose trail name was Sovereign. Now that's not so weird. It seems that people on the Appalachian Trail often take trail names, but he was argumentative and strange. The people departed from him, but these group of people who met him, two of them went to one place, 2 of them to another place. At night, he came back to one of the places. They actually ran away from him, and he ceased to pursue them, but he went to the campsite of the other people, where he pulled out a long hunting knife and stabbed both of those people, one of whom died. This man was charged in the federal court in the Western District of Virginia with murder and assault. Okay, that's the gruesome incident. Bill Bryson, who wrote A Walk in the Woods, makes a very good point on this subject. That for all the lurid stories about people being murdered on the Appalachian Trail, the fact is the Appalachian Trail is about 2,000 miles long. And if you were to draw a 2,000-mile long line through the United States in any place in any direction, you're going to go through a bunch of murders. So you're not any less safe on the Appalachian Trail than you are any place else in the United States. And in fact, the Appalachian Trail is a lot safer. The fact is that from 1974 to 2016, this is according to the trek.co, which I've never heard of, so you can make it the stat what you want. There have been 10 murders on the Appalachian Trail. You are hundreds of times more likely to be murdered in the U.S. as a whole than you are as an Appalachian Trail, on the Appalachian Trail, as scary as it may think to have that happen when you're in a tent somewhere in the dark in the woods at night. Various other things can present a danger when you go camping. Gas stoves. There are various blog posts that have warnings about gas camping stoves exploding. Even the Boy Scout website points out the conditions under which this can or cannot happen. Tree limbs. Somebody sets up their tent under a tree, a storm comes up, a big limb breaks off and kills them. It happens. Falling rocks. Now, you go on the website for Yosemite. I think it's the nationalparkservice.gov website for Yosemite National Park. And it has a very detailed map of, along the main part of the park, the rock fall over the last 150 years. A lot of detail. It's disturbing. But which makes it sort of amusing that if you go and do an internet search of campers falling rocks, the first page of search results is kind of an even tie between horrible incidents where people have been killed or almost killed by falling rocks and campsites named Falling Rocks Campsite. What a strange way to advertise a campsite. In 2016, Alan Bestler, was hiking with a friend who was identified only as Sonia in Arizona near Mesa, and they were attacked by a swarm of bees. His companion Sonia was able to escape to a nearby restroom. She said the attack was unprovoked. They were just hiking along the trail. Rescue personnel tried several times to approach Alex Bessler, who was laying on the ground, but were driven back by the swarm. They finally got him into a truck with bees pursuing, as they put it, and took him to a hospital, but it was too late. He was dead. They estimated that he had been stung 1,000 times. Now, in this case, Arizona is one of the places where, you've heard the term killer bees, Africanized honeybees have taken up residence in the United States. About 8 people a year die from bee stings in the United States. The Associated Press had an article in 2007 called "Be Careful of Bees When You Go Camping." And it had a couple of interesting pieces of advice. One is wear light-colored clothing. Because apparently bees are more likely to attack colors that they associate with the predators that usually prey on their hive, like bears and skunks. So wear darker colored clothing. They're more likely to think you're one of those things. The other thing is that, you may know this, the stinger of a bee sometimes comes out of your arm with the organs that pump the venom. It can continue to pump venom into you after you've been stung and the bee is gone. And the best way to get that stinger out is to scrape it out with a butter knife or the side of a credit card. Okay, I started off by saying don't go camping for any reason ever, and I hope you know that's tongue-in-cheek. These lurid stories don't change the fact that you're way more likely to get hurt driving in a car on the way to the campsite than you are in anything that's going to happen camping. A New York Times article reported a research study done a few years ago that said that in actuality, the most dangerous large animal in North America is the white-tailed deer, because people hit them with their cars. So if you want to stay safe, get off the road and go camping. Okay, What's That Noise? Camping Edition will continue next week. Thanks for joining me. I'm Jim Riley. Good night.